So today I have Ale with me. She is an occupational therapist who just opened her private practice. Beautiful occupational therapy, right? Say hi, Ale.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. So she is an OT who specializes in what? What do you specialize in?
Size specialized, I would say that I have a DIR floor time certification. I specialize in relationship based models, emotional regulation, sensory processing, behaviors.
And I love that because in times before I had my private practice, when I worked in clinics, and we've talked about this, I've worked in clinics that had PT, OT, and ST, but I never saw occupational therapists working on things of that nature. And I always saw them working on fine motor skills, right? Is it like cutting, threading beads, right?
Writing.
Or yes, or maybe some gross motor, but a lot of times that was PT. So I always I've had clients before, even before I had my private practice, that the parents would ask me if I knew an occupational therapist who specialized in like sensory regulation, and I never knew like where to to point them to. So I think it's so awesome to have you putting yourself out there in the community, because I think there's a need, and I don't think there's enough OTs who specialize in what you do. So I want to talk about why I recently partnered with you to help me host my reading camp that we did a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so for me, I've recognized for a while now that I can't work with my kids, my clients, if they're not regulated. What I specialize in is articulation therapy and myofunctional therapy. I do have language clients. I do reading. I do a lot of things, but my specialty is myo and artic. And those are two specialties that it's very much like cut and dry. Like you follow these steps and you get this outcome.
Yeah.
But if the child can't follow, and I feel like it's the same with reading too, right? But if the child can't follow those steps because they can't sit still, or they don't want to listen, or they're looking over here, or they can't hold the posture, or they're bored easily, then we can't get anything done. And truthfully, the majority of my clients are private pay, right? Like, let's be honest, parents pay me a good amount of money, and I'm not one who will continue charging you if I'm not making progress with your kids. So I have had conversations with parents where I've been like, you know what, it's been a month and we're still where we were a month ago because we cannot get anything done because he or she doesn't want to pay attention. And that's my language, right? I'm sure you're like, it's not that they don't want to, but we'll get to that, right? um and I've had to tell them, I need you to find like a therapist, a psychologist, a play therapist, someone like that, someone like you, before we can resume. And I haven't had a parent fight me on that yet. I think they appreciate that honesty. I met you, and you agreed to come help me with my reading camp. And before we did the reading camp, we met here and we did like a training on reading. And I was basically teaching you and the other two professionals. We had a teacher assistant, and then we had an SLP grad student, like how I teach reading. Again, like the steps, the rules that have been around since the beginning of time. And then I also was preparing you guys that I had a couple of clients that were going to be joining the camp. And I was telling you, they have these issues. It's so crazy because like we teach them how to read, and then or we teach them like this, and then like 5 minutes later they don't do it, or I can't get them to grasp the information, and they will know their sounds but then they can't blend it. And during that meeting, you like mentioned, like you kept saying, like when you're telling me that, I'm like wondering if it's like working memory, or I'm wondering if it's like recognizing shapes. And I'm going to be real honest, right? At that meeting, I think I kind of like blew that off. And I was like, yeah, but like reading's my thing. And so you just like don't understand yet. But then at the camp, like the way you just observed every child, and I would say, Ale, look, see, this is what I was talking about. And then you were able to pinpoint, like, oh, well, this is what's going on with this kid, and this is why they can't do A, B, and C right now. And I was like, so amazed by that. I want to ask you, so what kinds of things were you seeing at the camp?
So I guess I'm gonna tell you before everything because I guess a lot of things have come up since you started talking. That's the reason why I actually specialized in sensory regulation, emotional regulation. First of all, like I guess before having kids, I had an interest, right? I started even before OT school. I started like I don't even know why I was so interested in like parenting styles, like the respectful parenting and all these things. And then I had kids and I was like, this is not working out, like for me, like even as a parent that knew like different parenting styles, strategies. I was in OT, I was in OT school and everything. And then I became like, I started my field work and everything, and I saw differences in approaches, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started like noticing that something was off.
What wasn't working? Like with
Well,
your, if you're comfortable sharing, because
I
most
guess
of the, everyone's a mom probably watching, and I'm a mom, so it's okay. We know things don't go as we plan them. So what wasn't working
I
that you were trying to
guess
implement?
we basically just focus on what's on the surface. I guess with transitions, for example, we just want them to do whatever they want, like we want, right? Like we have a sequence during the day and it's not working. So I guess even in the clinic, sometimes we work on that transition. So we made up, like, I guess we develop recessions around transition so that they understand it. So then I started seeing like why, right? Because like as clinicians, we only like sometimes we only work on the skills, but we don't look at what's underneath. Like what if we can accommodate the child, see what's affecting development, what's impacting its development, like their development, like so that transitions are easier,
Yeah.
right? Like so there's an iceberg, right? Like the top of the iceberg, it's the behavior that we're seeing, but we have to dig deeper than
That's
that.
that's so true, and that's something that I'm barely learning, because again, I'm very like, even with my own son, I'm like, just do the thing. Like, just do the thing, and it would make life easier on all of us. So, I want to ask you with that, I want to ask you, how does regulation or being dysregulated affect attention and memory? So again, taking it back to like the camp, and we don't want to name the kiddos, but I know I had you watching a couple of specific kids, and then you even pointed out kids that on the first day, and we talked about this, I was like, oh my gosh, they're so bright, and like they're gonna catch on to everything fast, and it turned out they didn't. And so we can talk about, I think, masking later, but to take it all back, how does regulation affect attention and memory, or being dysregulated?
Well, regulation is the first step before even working on other skills. So it's the basis, right? Like you have to be regulated in order to pay attention, attend, like not get distracted. You have to be regulated, right? And regulated doesn't mean you're just calm and happy. Regulated means being able to function in an environment. So, like, and that's something that sometimes I have to remind myself. Like, just because the kid is calm and attending, that doesn't mean that child is regulated. Why? Because if something happens and that child melts down right away, has very intense reactions, it's struggling with something, maybe visual stimuli, they get distracted, that's not regulation. You have to be able to filter that input.
Right. And we had an incident like that, right?
Yes.
Where the child appears calm, and I'll even use the ugly word compliant, right? For the most part, Monday through Thursday, right? During class at least. And then one thing set this child off, and it was like you said, I wasn't there, you were there. It was like an inconsolable like meltdown.
Yes.
And so, yeah, do you want to talk about that?
I started noticing like a pattern and something that I do a lot. I don't really intervene right away because I want to see and observe behaviors, patterns. I want to see what's going on, right? How is the child interacting with kids? Why not?
For those of us who aren't used to looking for it, what does dysregulation look like? Like, what signs should we be looking for as like clinicians, caregivers, um, teachers, parents? What does dysregulation look like to you? Like the non-obvious signs.
Like,
So, for example, for our little one that had the episode
yes.
At camp,
You want to see like the patterns, I guess. How is the child attending to tasks? How is he or she learning? And then you want to see differences in behavior. In behavior, I don't mean bad behavior or good behavior, just what they're doing every day, right? You have to see patterns and see. They sometimes like you get to see body cues as far as like getting faster, high pitch voice, all these things. You can right away see that, right?
oh my gosh, that is so crazy, because that was one I have to interrupt, because this one specific child we're talking about is a client of mine. And that, of course, as a speech language pathologist, I notice pitch and voice and speech patterns, but it doesn't mean I know what they mean when it comes to this kind of thing. And this particular little one always talks in a loud, high pitch voice.
Yes.
With like a giant smile on their face, you know? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That totally could look like masking, I guess. Like, and sometimes
What is masking?
Masking, it's like a mask that you put on. Like sometimes deep down you feel anxious, angry, upset, but then you learn to hide that because I'm gonna tell you, like behavioral approaches, that's what they teach. Just keep it down. You're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to get angry because we're working right now. We're learning, right? So that's what we learn, and I feel like that comes from generations back.
100%.
Yes.
I've always felt that way. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's like a system problem, not so much like to blame therapies or us as clinicians. We just do it. I'm gonna say, like, as a human being, I do it sometimes too because that's what I learned. That's what my parents learned. That's what my grandma learned. So it's just like ingrained in society. But I feel like now with science, neuroscience, we're learning that it's okay to experience emotions, have a break, and then we can, like, I guess problem solve. I guess the first thing that comes to mind, it's a really good book I read. It's called The Whole Brain Child. That's one of the books.
The Whole Brain Child?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. So that's what took me to like all this. Actually, I feel like that was the first book that I really took, that really changed my views, I guess.
And so, like, I'm going to tell you, as someone who grew up very old school also, but was always in trouble. I had no problems masking. I was just always in trouble.
You still are.
Yeah, I know. And now as an adult, it comes across as, oh, she's so authentic, right? She's so like not afraid to say what she means. But when I was little, girl, I was always like in that principal's office. So it's like one extreme or the other. But then like when I work with kids though, I I don't have I am learning to have that empathy. And so like what would you say to teachers who are like, or people who talk down or would just say you're just like part of the gentle parenting movement.
Or behavior.
You're just part of like that whole like crunchy granola, like, oh, let's care about the kids' feelings. Nobody cared about our feelings, you know what I mean? Or like realistically, your kid needs to know how to like be in class and pay attention. And I think that's true. And I have to say, from my lens, I it's really ironic because I don't have a child who has um, any issues paying attention in school, does not get in trouble in school, follows directions. But then like lately I've been thinking like he masking because he does tend to like blow up at me at home. You know what I mean? But I don't know what it's like to have to be the parent that always has to get called to school or has to have meetings with the teacher, or like teachers and professionals are always saying your kid's this, your kid's that. And you'll see online, like teachers will say, it's because they're not disciplined. It's because they're not disciplined. It's because parents let them get away with everything. So, like, what would be your answer, like, in advocating for that kid to, like, parents or teachers or coaches?
I guess the first thing that I would say is that every kid can do good if they can, if they have the skills, if they have the regulation, if they can actually access that frontal lobe that works like that gives you that problem solving, all the thinking. So if we're not able to access that, how are we going to do what adults want us to do, right? So we have to think of it as something's missing. Like, and you see that kids that maybe are on the spectrum or have developmental delays or have learning challenges, those are the ones with the most difficult behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because something's missing. And that's what I'm like, I guess what I say is that we have to look at what's underneath those behaviors, the tip of the iceberg, that's all we see, but there's more under. So that's one thing. And then as far as like, I've heard that as far as like parents saying that kids just they just have to listen, right?
Right, like
Mm-hmm.
just
Just do it.
behave,
Like
like they have no
I didn't
discipline.
get that, right? Like I just
Mm-hmm.
had to behave and learn my way. Well, that's the problem, I guess. And I guess I want to say that that's how you start getting these points of view that are like very close minded, um,
Mm-hmm.
because we were taught to just do what we are told, and then we don't get that, we don't access that capacity of like knowing that there's always a gray area, and then also like a what if, right? Like what if the way that I was taught is not the perfect way, right? Like we can always improve, um, what we learn, how we parent. We can always make it better. We're never gonna get to a place where we can just be the perfect parent or
Mm-hmm.
perfect person. I'll tell you, like, I'm not perfect with my child either. I have to work on my own regulation, my
Oh
own
my gosh,
patterns.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, like I scream at my house too. Sometimes I need my time. So we all need like that sense, like self awareness, I guess.
And that's
Right.
such a good point, right? Because and it's like right, it trends on like TikTok and everywhere. Like we're all a bunch of dysregulated adults trying to write, like telling these kids to be regulated when we're not like even regulated ourselves. And like to that point, it was so amazing to, because we had what, like 9 kids with your daughter, right? A total of 9 kids, but we had 4 professionals. We had an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, we had an SLP grad student, and then like a teacher's assistant. It's like 4 adults with 4 different specialties that were all able to like attend to these kids. And I remember the whole time just being like, How amazing would it be if schools were like that? And unfortunately, it's not like that. So instead of like the kid being able, like the one kid who lacks impulse control or has is like dysregulated, instead of like, oh, somebody like with the knowledge and the tools is able to like remove them and work with them or help them get regulated, it's like they get in trouble, right? Or they get separated or they get embarrassed in front of like the rest of the class, right?
And let me tell you, that happened during camp, right? There was this kid that was very dysregulated. This kid wanted to learn, wanted to pay attention, wanted to participate. He was so excited, but he was distracting others.
Yeah.
Yes. So I actually had to take him out. We did some heavy work. I had
What's
to,
heavy work?
heavy work, it's, I guess, exercise, if you want to put it simple. Like sometimes kids need a little bit of movement, but the right type of movement.
And one thing I noticed, because I started looking at things differently when you came into the picture, is there was one day, right, that this child was like rolling himself against the wall, right? He just like started at one end and then he would just like roll himself. And he is like the sweetest, most loving kid that wants to make like all the adults in his life proud. But even that day, I was like getting frustrated, right? I was getting dysregulated. And then thankfully, yes, you very calmly were like, okay, let's come on, let's go. And then you took him and then
Out. Yes, exactly. And that's another thing. Sometimes we do get dysregulated and it comes across as being like, I didn't take him out to punish him, to more to come across like you're doing something wrong. Because in reality, that kid doesn't really understand what his body needs yet. So when I took him out, we did some bear walks. We did some bouncing too, because he wanted to bounce, then a little bit more bear walks, crab walks. When he told me he was feeling better, we actually sat down. I explained a little bit of what his body was feeling, because kids, I guess, need to understand what's happening and why they're moving so much and why he was being asked to step out, right? So, and then from there we modified his seat, right? So I got him a bouncy chair, which worked amazingly, like beautifully, because then he was able to sit there for quite some time and complete his work.
so first I want to ask you, what how do you explain that to a 5 or 6 year old? Why you're essentially saying you explain to him why he's doing what he's doing?
Mm-hmm.
What did you
So
say?
I guess you have to think about the age and the understanding, how much they're understanding, right? You have to, I guess, narrate what happened, right? Like, so for this kid, I was like, you know what? Do you know why you're here with me? Why we're gonna do exercises? And of course, he said no. And
He
I was
was
like,
so sad.
yes,
What
he
was he
was, and
like?
he started kind of like wanted to cry because
Yeah.
he wanted to participate. And I was like, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that I don't know if you're noticing this, but you're moving a lot. And he was like blank, like he didn't know what he was doing. You're moving a lot and you're talking a lot, and it's okay. You're not a lot. It's just that your body needs to move and your mind is thinking super fast, right? You're very excited. You want to learn, and I can see that, right? So we're gonna do some exercises because that's probably gonna help you calm down
How
a
does
little.
exercises help?
You have to see what this kid is doing, right? So by observing him, he was like you mentioned, moving a lot on the wall, like from one side to the other. So that's proprioceptive input, right? Vestibular input. So that's telling me that kid needs to move now. That kid needs that input now. Of course, like they're being disruptive in that environment. I mean, like they're distracting others. We need to also bring it up to surface so that they understand that that's what they need in a more, like, I don't want to say functional, but
Is it that if
like
they can
structured.
understand it, then they can better
and then apply it,
Control it.
right?
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
even control it, but like find different ways of like understand how they can support their nervous system.
Because I
Yes.
want to I want to talk about another behavior that this kiddo showed.
Yes.
The way that he always just needed to be hugging and kissing in the most innocent way, but always, right?
Yes.
Touching, squeezing, hugging, leaning on, and giving kisses to, right?
Yes.
Which at 5 and 6, we're still like, "Ay, that's so cute," or giggling, like, how funny. But imagine him
Older.
being 9, 10, 11, like, so where do you think that behavior comes from? Is that also
Yes.
needing the input, the sense, the touching, like?
Yes, and we actually talk about it, right? Like we had a conversation during the camp because I noticed that, and sometimes I guess I want to say that teachers or like people think that that's just to get the attention, right? Like that kid's misbehaving, and then he's hugging me, so then he's like, trying to get his way, right, with life. But in reality, you have to, like I'm telling you, like you have to see the patterns. That hugging means that he needs that proprioceptive input, that pressure to
Mhm.
feel regulated. And then
Mm.
you can see that some of these kids need that connection with people. Like when we took him out, he was like, I want to learn, I want to do this, I'm not learning here outside, right? So
Mhm.
you can see that kid needs to connect, needs to feel seen. So it's not about like he's I guess he's just trying to get that input that his body needs, and he doesn't really understand that
Yeah.
that's what he's doing, right?
I guess just to take it back to like learning or like being in school, being in our reading camp. I know that our reading teacher, our teaching assistant, she was like, we were talking about how one of the kids couldn't remember um, something that we had just taught. And just as a speech language pathologist, we do get cognition right in our grad program. It is in our scope as far as like I know that if you can't pay attention, then you can't remember, right? Like attention is required for working memory. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So all of these kids who can't attend, and then we expect them to like take a test or like write a paper, it becomes a problem, right?
Yes, I guess like the first thing that came to mind, as OTs, we're really good with something that's called task analysis, right? So, like coming from that perspective, we get to see every single step. Um, you need multiple systems to work so that you can complete each step, right?
Yes.
If something's missing, that's when um, you don't meet your goals. I guess you don't get them to remember how to use that magic rule.
Yes. For example, I have this whole lesson to teach the magic E, right? It's like E at the end of the word makes the vowel long. And I like all the kids are sitting in front of me and I'm like presenting the lesson and then I finish the lesson and then like I'm okay. So this is the word cap. Now I'm putting the magic E at the end. What does it change the word to? And they're all like, and I was like, Ale, what am I doing wrong? Like, am I not explaining it clearly? Is it my wording? And then that's when you described that it needs to be broken down into steps for a
Small
lot of these
steps.
kids, right? So,
Yes.
like for example, what would be your steps for breaking down the magic E
Yes.
lesson? Yeah.
Yes. So I guess we first have to explain it, right? But you have to make sure they're understanding, right? So can you tell us the rule? So
Oh,
whenever.
so when E is at the end of the word, it makes a vowel say its name.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the first sentence says when E
Uh huh.
is at the end of the word. That's the first step. So every time, so we start there. So you have to show this kid multiple words, and then you have to ask him which one ends with E, so that they get that step. And then from there, we make the vowel say its name. Which vowel? The other one, right? So you start, I guess, once they understand that they have to find or recognize a word that ends with E, then you, and then they answer correctly. I guess you have to make sure that they get that skill down. And then from there, what else is our brain doing after that?
That's it, right?
Right. So you find the word, and then from there,
you read it.
Not really.
Oh.
Not really. I feel like from there you have to understand which vowel, right, will change the sound.
That's so crazy.
Take, right? Take, that's take. So then which vowel, right? A. So then you have to ask them, right, which is the other vowel. So that's the next step, right? So now you have to explain E is silent, and then you have to get them to understand that we're not gonna pronounce our E, right?
Oh yeah, and that was a whole step that I missed too a lot of the time. And then halfway through teaching it, I was like, oh my gosh, I also have to let them know that E stays quiet. And so then I just like really quickly put it in there. I'm like, oh, and by the way, the E doesn't say anything. And I'm sure these kids were like,
and then we hide it, right? So, and then we actually have to explain it, and we got to do this too. We use different systems to teach it, right? We use Play-Doh, meaning that we use our hands. We also used a little bit of emotion with our magic wand. And every time you add that component of like something emotional that kids will remember, that's when learning happens too. So you have to create a story, and that's how they'll learn, right? So I'm pretty sure these kids are gonna go home. Like my kid went home and she wanted to pretend she had a wand and then practice more at home. So I'm pretty sure some of these kids went back home and then they taught their parents how to use this magic wand.
And then it's so devastating, right? Because there's great teachers out there, right? But it's an exhausting job. You have so much else going on. So to make every day magical like that, or to make sure you hit every single one of those steps, when you have like a class of 24, 25 is a big ask. And it just really made me look at like, man, there's so many kids out there that I'm sure if they were just given the tools or the people that could help them, we wouldn't have like this decline in education and reading. We wouldn't have so many kids being labeled as like the bad kid. So I love that. I want to talk about one more thing that was fascinating to me. I had a client who attended the camp, who is bright as can be, and who in like one-on-one, I could teach her something and then she would do it, but then ask her like immediately after, and then she would forget it. Or to me, I felt like, again, is she not understanding my question? Right? That's what happened, right? So like, I think, for example, auditorily, I could be like, what letter makes the K sound? And she'd say C. Or what letter makes the A sound? And she'd say A. But then we'd like put the letter there and she couldn't identify the letter, right? Is that what it was? And then also putting her aside to work with you, you realized that she couldn't write the letters, which is something that I actually previously to the camp had gotten onto my reading teacher about, and actually sat in on one of her sessions because I was like, girl, you've been like working with this client for a really long time, and I just saw her because I see her for speech and Mile, and she can't write down any of her letters. She doesn't know them. I immediately was like, she can't write her letters. She doesn't know her letters. So I know that was a lot. So
No, no,
break it down
you're
for us.
fine. You're fine. So I guess something that I want to say is that as OTs, going back to the task analysis, I started observing a pattern again. So I guess I guess for each lesson we had different activities targeting different systems: the visual, the auditory, the tactile. We started working on, I guess I want to say, reflexes or like fast thinking, working memory, executive functioning. So we started seeing a lot. So I start seeing, once we start breaking down these activities, and I start seeing the pattern of where like this child's struggling with visual input. And every time you present an activity that involves seeing a letter, a symbol, that child's having difficulty completing that task. So I started seeing how for these activities she was struggling, but for the auditory type of activities she was fine.
That blew my mind, girl.
So
That blew my. I will never stop thinking about that to this day. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it is such a testament to like, if we keep to ourselves as clinicians, and I'm just like constantly like, she's just not getting it, she's just not getting it, I don't know what to do, she's just not getting it, then we're just like treating and like billing or charging parents and just struggling.
wasting
Whereas
time.
yeah,
Yes.
wasting time. Whereas like someone like I call an OT, or if it was a PT, or if it was like whatever, reach out to someone instead of all of us being like, no, I'm like I'm the reading specialist. This is like my thing. I can fix it. Like, which is what so many clinicians do. Um, I would have never ever, like, it almost makes me like teary eyed because I'm like, oh my gosh, like you really just like opened my eyes to that. So I'm going to let you tell me how you would address that, because a lot of these kids are not going to become her clients also. um how you would address that. Is it like visual spatial difficulties?
Yes,
Yeah.
but you also have to like, I want to tell you that even as I observe that, I still have to present several activities targeting that visual system to determine deep on a deeper level what's happening. So I actually, once we finish our camp, I you probably read my input there. I provided some activities for mom to do,
Mhm.
like patterns, a lot of building, recognizing different shapes, right? All of that. But I want to say that without an OT that understands that visual system, it's just going to be practice, and maybe we're just going to target the surface, right? So you kind of do need an OT or someone that is trained in visual
Yeah, right. Because so
information.
kind of like SLPs, like not every SLP has enough training to do feeding, or not every SLP has enough training to do myo. Is it the same for OT? Is it like you guys get all of it in grad school and then you afterwards have to decide, oh, I want to learn more about this, or I want to learn more about that?
Yes, you
Yeah.
specialize after
Yeah.
that, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If you start seeing that there's something off with your child's visual, or being having difficulties identifying letters, that's what you work on, right? Like, if you like, you have to see, you have to, I guess, get in contact with your OT, reach
And
out to us.
yes, and it's like so important. So like now I've gotten into, I've worked everywhere in town, okay? And I've gotten into the habit of telling my family members, like, your child needs OT, but needs a very
Yeah.
specific type of OT. And up until meeting you, and as far as in El Paso, Texas, I have not known where to send them, because I know if I send them to a clinic, they're just going to work on cutting all day. If I send them to, and we had a mom of a child say, and her child just started at this other clinic, like I don't know why I have her receiving OT here because I feel like it's not doing anything. Well, it's because that OT is not addressing any of the things that you just talked about.
Yeah.
So when I refer out, I'm very like specific. I'm like, you need to make sure that this clinic has an OT that specializes in sensory regulation or knows how to recognize those patterns, because otherwise, and it's the same with speech. There's so many kids that need services. Insurance has us all on a tight leash, right? Like, we're all underpaid, we're all overworked. Some clinicians just are clocking in, right? And it's not their fault. It's burnout. I'll do another episode about that. It's not always their fault,
But
but
don't you feel like it's also the system,
yes.
insurances, too? Because I've been there. Like, I feel
Yes,
like
me
if
too.
I go to a clinic, I'm going to have to work on what insurance tells me, right? I have to be very careful how I write my goals.
Mm-hmm.
I like probably not going to be able to write my perfect DIR floor time goals
Mm-hmm.
the way that I want and I feel like will benefit this child because of insurance. So it's not everything on like OTs because I've
Or
known
STs
or
or
STs or
clinicians.
PTs or like
Yeah, yeah.
anyone, right?
Like I said,
It's just system, I feel
it's
like.
the system. And when you work for a big clinic, right, it's like the owners are, as much as I'm sure they started with the right vision, it does begin as you grow, like the bottom dollar. It matters, right? Because they have to pay their bills too.
Yeah.
But we're trying to change that. And so Ale has her own private practice now, so which is amazing. So tell us where we can find you. What is your website?
Yes, it's beautifulot.com.
Beautifulot.com. I saw it. She just uploaded it. It's beautiful. And there, I believe we can find all the different packages, everything you offer. You offer so many different choices. So, like, maybe if you're not prepared to commit to like this many sessions, you offer like consulting. You offer like, maybe you can just do like 4 sessions. And I think that allows the families um like choice, the power of like choice, not just like, you have to see me for this many sessions, and if you don't see me, then you have to make it up in this amount of time, right? And then also, as a clinician, keeps you grounded and like not so stressed, and really able to give your all to each family. And you're like limiting the amount of families that you're seeing, which I think is important, like for that reason, right?
Yes. So that's actually yes. So I feel like I'm doing this my goal.
Tell us, tell us your goal.
So I guess like the reason why I ended up starting Beautiful OT.
She got far away from me.
Yes. It's because of what we talked about, right? Like what we're saying, the system, right? We need to make things better for kids, right? Regulation, it's not something that can be measured with a goal that insurance gonna pay for, right? So that's actually my main goal for with Beautiful OT, to I guess work on the what's underneath, right? Things that are not able to be measured. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping that that's what my website is communicating.
it is.
Yes. So I
Yeah.
mean, you guys can add me.
Yes. Add her, follow her. She also has an Instagram. And I'm so excited to collaborate with you more in the future. All righty. Well, thank you so much for being here. So, for parents who tuned in today, if your child is struggling, it doesn't always mean that they're just not listening or that they just need more practice at whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. There could be something deeper going on with them, whether it be inability to regulate or to pay attention, or if it's a processing issue. Understanding that can completely change the outcome for your kiddo, because then you can find them the right help. which is exactly why co-treating matters. I'm so glad we got to talk to Ale today. I will link her website and the book she talked about at the bottom of this episode. So thank you guys for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode and you don't miss the next co-treating conversation with our next professional.